What would you do if the woman who just walked into your life already knew your deepest secrets? Noah Bennett thought he had his world under control. Single father, quiet life, no complications. Then Lila Hart appeared at his door with eyes that recognized him, a smile that shouldn't exist, and questions she refused to answer. What he didn't know was that their connection wasn't coincidence. It was something far more dangerous, something that would shatter everything he thought he knew about his past, and force him to choose between the safety he built and the truth he never saw coming. If you want to know how a single repair call turned into the most dangerous love story Noah ever lived, stay with me until the end. And while you're here, hit that like button and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Noah Bennett didn't believe in fate. He believed in oil changes, in electric panels that didn't short out, in raising his son without apologies. He believed in showing up on time, getting the job done, and going home before the world had a chance to ask him for more than he could give. Love? That was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not anymore. It was a Tuesday evening when the call came in. Another last-minute repair for one of those uptown penthouses where the rent could cover his mortgage 3 times over. Noah almost turned it down. His toolbox was already in the truck, his son Eli was at his mom's for the night, and he had plans to do absolutely nothing but collapse on the couch with lukewarm pizza and a game he'd never finish. But the job paid double for after hours, and Noah had learned a long time ago that you didn't say no to double. So he went. The building was one of those glass towers that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never had to carry groceries up the stairs. Polished floors, ambient lighting that made everything feel like a hotel lobby. The doorman barely glanced at him as Noah stepped into the elevator with his toolbox and a vague sense of not belonging, which was fine. He didn't want to belong here anyway. The elevator climbed silently, numbers lighting up one by one until it reached the 23rd floor. When the doors opened, Noah stepped into a hallway that smelled like expensive candles and other people's money. The door to the penthouse was already open when he arrived. "Hello?" he called, stepping inside. The space was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like it was something you could own if you just stood close enough. Furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. Art on the walls that Noah wouldn't have recognized if it came with a manual. Everything was white or glass or some shade of gray that probably had a fancy name. And then he saw her. She was standing by the window, silhouetted against the glow of the skyline, her back to him. Dark hair fell past her shoulders in soft waves. She wore a simple black dress that somehow managed to look effortless and devastating at the same time. She didn't turn around right away, and for a second, Noah wondered if she even knew he was there. I'm here about the breaker," he said, his voice awkward in the silence. She turned, and Noah forgot how to breathe. She wasn't just beautiful. She was familiar in a way that made his chest tighten, like déjà vu, except sharper, more specific. Her eyes met his, and for a split second something passed between them that Noah couldn't name. Recognition, maybe. Or something closer to surprise. But then it was gone, replaced by a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're the electrician," she said. Her voice was low, smooth, and strangely certain. "Yeah," Noah said, forcing himself to look away. "Noah Bennett. You called about a power issue?" "I did." She stepped closer, and Noah noticed the way she moved, confident, deliberate, like someone who knew exactly how much space she was allowed to take up. "It's the breaker in the kitchen. Keeps tripping." "Shouldn't be a big deal," Noah said, shifting his toolbox. "I'll take a look." She didn't move. "Do I know you?" she asked. Noah blinked. "What?" "You look familiar." He let out a short laugh, uncomfortable. "I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I'd remember." She tilted her head slightly, studying him in a way that made his skin prickle. "Maybe." Then she turned and walked toward the kitchen, leaving Noah standing there with a dozen questions he didn't know how to ask. He followed, his work boots too loud against the hardwood floors. The kitchen was as pristine as the rest of the place. Marble countertops, high-end appliances, the kind of espresso machine that looked like it required a PhD to operate. Noah set his toolbox down and opened the panel near the fridge, trying to focus on the wiring instead of the woman standing a few feet away, watching him. "So," she said casually, "you do this full-time?" "Yeah." Noah tested the breaker, flipping it off and on. About 10 years now. You like it? It pays the bills. That's not what I asked. Noah glanced at her. She was leaning against the counter now, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. He wasn't sure if she was making conversation or testing him. I like fixing things, he said carefully. It's straightforward. You go in, figure out what's broken, and you fix it. No guessing. Sounds simple. It is. And what about things that can't be fixed? Noah paused, his hand still on the breaker. Then you replace them. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. What if you can't replace them either? Then you learn to live without them. The silence that followed felt heavier than it should have. Noah turned back to the panel, suddenly aware of how close she was standing. He could smell her perfume. Something subtle, expensive, the kind of scent that lingered long after someone left the room. Breaker's fine, he said, pulling his hand back. Probably just overloaded. You running a lot of appliances at once? Not that I know of. Well, if it trips again, you might need a new panel, but for now, you should be good. He closed the box and turned to face her, expecting her to nod and let him leave. Instead, she was still watching him with that same unsettling intensity. What's your name? Noah asked, even though he wasn't sure why. Lila. Lila, he repeated. The name didn't mean anything to him, but something about the way she said it made him feel like it should. Thank you, Noah, she said softly. He nodded, picking up his toolbox. Yeah, no problem. As he headed toward the door, he felt her eyes on his back. It was a physical weight pressing between his shoulder blades. Noah? He stopped, turning halfway. Do you believe in coincidences? She asked. He frowned. Not really. Me neither. Noah didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. He just left, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click that felt too final. But as he rode the elevator back down, watching the numbers descend, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted, something he didn't understand and wasn't sure he wanted to. And Lila Hart, standing alone in her penthouse, with the city glowing beneath her, pressed her fingers to her lips and smiled to herself like she'd just confirmed something she'd been waiting a long time to know. The drive home was quiet. Noah turned on the radio, then turned it off. His mind kept circling back to the penthouse, to Lila's face, to the way she'd looked at him like she was seeing someone else. Do I know you? The question rattled around in his head, refusing to settle. By the time he pulled into his driveway, Noah had convinced himself he was overthinking it. She was just a client. A weird, beautiful client who asked strange questions, but still just a client. He'd probably never see her again. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. Inside, the house was dark and too quiet. Eli's toys were scattered across the living room floor, action figures frozen mid-battle, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. Noah picked up a stray dinosaur and set it on the shelf, then stood there for a moment looking at the mess. This was his life. This small house with its creaky floors and leaky faucet. This job that paid just enough. This routine that kept him moving forward, one day at a time. It was enough. It had to be. Noah grabbed a beer from the fridge and dropped onto the couch, pulling out his phone. He had 3 missed texts, 2 from clients asking about appointments, 1 from his ex asking if he could take Eli an extra night next week because she had plans. He typed back a quick "sure" and tossed the phone onto the cushion beside him. But his mind was still in that penthouse, still replaying the way Lila had said his name, still wondering why it felt like she'd been waiting for him. 3 days later, Noah saw her again. He was at the hardware store, hunting for a specific fuse he'd been meaning to replace for a week, when he turned the corner of aisle 7 and nearly walked straight into her. "Oh, sorry," he said automatically, stepping back. Lila looked up, and for a second he thought she might pretend not to recognize him, but instead her face brightened and she smiled. "Noah." "Lila." He glanced around, confused. "What are you doing here?" "Shopping," she said simply, holding up a small basket with paint samples and a roll of painter's tape. "Right." Noah shifted his weight, suddenly aware of how absurd the situation felt. "Didn't expect to see you in a place like this." "Why not?" "I don't know. You just don't seem like the DIY type." She laughed, a real laugh, bright and unexpected. "What type do I seem like?" "The type who hires people to do things for them." "Fair," she admitted, "but I like doing some things myself." Noah didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. There was a pause, and then Lila glanced at the fuse in his hand. Fixing something? She asked. Always. Must be exhausting. It's just work. Still, she looked at him in that same searching way she had before, like she was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't know he was part of. You should take a break sometime. I take breaks. When? Noah opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't actually remember the last time he'd done something that wasn't for work or for Eli. Lila smiled knowingly. That's what I thought. What about you? Noah asked, deflecting. You take breaks? Not enough. Then we're both bad at it. Guess so. There was another pause, and this time it didn't feel awkward. It felt easy, like they'd done this before, which didn't make sense because they hadn't. I should go, Noah said finally. Got a job in 20 minutes. Of course. Lila stepped aside, but as he moved past her, she spoke again. Noah? He stopped. It was good to see you. He looked back at her, and for a moment he almost said something, almost asked why she was looking at him like that, almost asked if she really thought they'd met before. But instead, he just nodded. You too. And then he left. But this time the feeling didn't go away. It followed him all the way to the job site, a cramped apartment where the owner had tried to install a ceiling fan himself and nearly burned the place down. It sat with him while he worked, rewiring the fixture with steady hands while his mind wandered. It crept into his thoughts that night when he was putting Eli to bed, reading the same dinosaur book they'd read 100 times before. Dad? Noah blinked, realizing he'd stopped mid-sentence. Yeah, buddy? You okay? Eli was 6 years old, and somehow he already had a sixth sense for when Noah's mind was somewhere else. Yeah, Noah said, forcing a smile. Just tired. You're always tired. That's what happens when you get old. Eli wrinkled his nose. You're not old. Tell that to my back. Eli giggled, and Noah felt the knot in his chest loosen just a little. This was his life. This was what mattered. Not strange encounters with women who looked at him like they knew things he didn't. Not coincidences that didn't make sense. He kissed Eli's forehead and turned off the light. But as he closed the door and stood in the hallway, listening to his son's breathing settle into sleep, Noah couldn't help but wonder, what if Lila was right? What if coincidences didn't exist? And if they didn't, what did that mean? The third time he saw her, it wasn't a coincidence at all. It was a Friday afternoon, and Noah was at Eli's school for the parent-teacher conference he'd almost forgotten about. He hated these things. Not because Eli was doing badly, he wasn't, but because they always made him feel like he was being judged for doing this alone. The other parents showed up in pairs, moms and dads who held hands and laughed at their kids' artwork together. Noah showed up with grease still under his fingernails from the morning's job and a coffee stain on his shirt he hadn't noticed until he was already in the parking lot. He was sitting in the hallway, waiting for his turn, flipping through a pamphlet about upcoming field trips when he heard her voice. Noah? He looked up. Lila was standing a few feet away, dressed more casually than he'd ever seen her. Jeans, a soft sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked younger, less guarded, and somehow even more out of place in this elementary school hallway than he felt. What are you doing here? Noah asked, genuinely confused. Volunteering, she said, gesturing toward the classroom behind her. Art program. I help out a couple times a month. Seriously? Why is that so hard to believe? I don't know, you just don't seem like the elementary school type. She smirked. What type do I seem like? I'm starting to think I have no idea. Lila laughed, and Noah found himself smiling despite himself. Your son goes here? She asked. Yeah, Eli, first grade. That's sweet. He's a good kid. I'm sure he is. Lila paused, then added quietly, You're doing this alone? Noah stiffened slightly. Yeah, his mom and we're not together. I didn't mean to pry. It's fine. He rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable. It's just the way it is. Lila nodded, but she didn't look away. There was something in her eyes, something soft and understanding that made Noah feel exposed in a way he didn't like. That must be hard, she said. It's worth it. I believe you. There was a weight to those 3 words that Noah didn't understand. Like she wasn't just talking about him, like she was talking about something else entirely. Before he could ask what she meant, a teacher appeared in the doorway, calling his name. "Mr. Bennett, we're ready for you." Noah stood, grabbing his jacket. "That's me." Lila stepped aside, but as he passed, she touched his arm lightly. "Noah?" He stopped, looking down at her hand, then up at her face. "I'm glad I ran into you," she said softly. "Yeah," Noah said, his voice rougher than he intended. "Me too." And as he walked into the classroom, leaving Lila standing in the hallway, he realized something that made his stomach twist. He wanted to see her again, not by accident, not by chance. He wanted to actually see her. The parent-teacher conference was fine. Mrs. Palmer said all the things Noah already knew. Eli was bright, creative, a little shy, but coming out of his shell. He worked well with others. He needed to focus more during reading time. Noah nodded and thanked her and promised to work on it at home, all while his mind was somewhere else. When he stepped back into the hallway, Lila was gone. Noah told himself he wasn't disappointed. He told himself it didn't matter. But when he got to his truck and pulled out his phone, he found himself staring at the screen, wondering if he should text her, except he didn't have her number. He sat there for a long moment, the engine idling, before he finally put the truck in gear and drove home. Eli was with his mom for the weekend, which meant the house would be empty, which meant Noah would spend the next 2 days fixing things that didn't need fixing and trying not to think about the woman who kept appearing in his life like she belonged there. But when he pulled into the driveway, there was a car he didn't recognize parked on the street. And leaning against it, arms crossed, was Lila. Noah's heart kicked hard against his ribs. He turned off the truck and climbed out, walking toward her slowly. "What are you doing here?" "I asked one of the teachers where you lived," Lila said. "Hope that's not weird." "It's a little weird." "I know." She pushed off the car, and Noah saw the uncertainty in her expression. I didn't want to wait for another coincidence." Noah stopped a few feet away from her. "What do you want, Lila?" "I want to know you." The honesty in her voice hit him harder than he expected. "Why?" he asked. "I don't know." She laughed, but it sounded fragile. "I really don't. But every time I see you, I feel like I'm remembering something I forgot, and it's driving me crazy." Noah's throat tightened. "You said you lost your memory." "I did. A few years ago. There's this gap, and I've spent so long trying to piece it together, but nothing ever fits. Until you." "I don't understand." "Neither do I." Lila took a step closer. "But I need to figure it out, and I think you're part of it." Noah wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she was looking for something that wasn't there, that he was just some guy who fixed breakers and raised his kid and didn't have room in his life for mysteries. But he couldn't, because he felt it too. "I don't know what you want from me," he said quietly. "Just time. Let me be around you. Let me see if this feeling goes away or if it means something." "And if it means something?" Lila's eyes searched his. "Then maybe we both get answers." Noah exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. This was a bad idea. He knew it was a bad idea. He had Eli to think about. He had a life that worked because it was simple and predictable and safe. But when he looked at Lila, really looked at her, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Possibility. "Okay," he said. Lila blinked. "Okay?" "Yeah, but we do this slow. I've got a kid, and I'm not bringing someone into his life unless I know it's real." "I understand. And you have to be honest with me about everything." "I will." Noah nodded, then surprised himself by asking, "You want to come inside? I was about to make dinner." Lila smiled, small and genuine. "I'd like that." But they sat at Noah's kitchen table eating spaghetti that was slightly overcooked and garlic bread that was slightly burned and talked about everything and nothing. Lila told him about her job in marketing, about how she'd built a career out of selling things she didn't care about to people who didn't need them. She told him about the accident, a car crash 3 years ago that left her in the hospital for weeks and erased 6 months of her life like someone had taken a scalpel to her brain. "The doctors said I was lucky," she said, twisting her fork through the pasta, "that I could have died. But it doesn't feel lucky when you wake up and half your life is missing." "What do you remember?" Noah asked. "Pieces. faces I don't recognize, places I've never been. And this feeling, like I left something important behind and I don't know what it is. And you think I'm connected to that? Lila met his eyes. I think you might be. Noah wanted to ask how, wanted to ask why. But instead he just nodded and poured her more wine. They talked until the food was gone and the wine bottle was empty. They talked until Noah realized it was past midnight and Lila was yawning into her hand. I should go, she said, standing up. You okay to drive? I'm fine. Just tired. Noah walked her to the door, and when she turned to say goodbye, they stood there for a moment, too close and not close enough. Thank you, Lila said softly. For what? For not thinking I'm crazy. I don't think you're crazy. You should, Noah smiled. Maybe I'm crazy too. Lila laughed, and then, before he could second-guess himself, Noah leaned in and kissed her. It was brief, tentative, the kind of kiss that asked a question instead of making a statement. When he pulled back, Lila's eyes were wide. Was that okay? Noah asked. Yeah, she whispered. More than okay. Good. She left a few minutes later, and Noah stood in the doorway, watching her taillights disappear down the street. And for the first time in years, Noah Bennett let himself believe that maybe his life was about to become something more than just getting by. He just hoped he was ready for it. Over the next few weeks, Noah and Lila fell into a rhythm. They didn't call it dating, they didn't put labels on it, they just existed together. Coffee on Tuesday mornings before Noah's first job, lunch on Thursdays when Lila could sneak away from work, long phone calls late at night when Eli was asleep and the house was quiet. Lila asked about his life in a way that felt genuine. She wanted to know about Eli, about Noah's childhood, about the things that made him who he was. And Noah, who had spent years keeping people at arm's length, found himself answering. He told her about his parents, who died in a house fire when he was 19, about how he dropped out of trade school to take care of his younger sister until she graduated high school, about how he'd met Eli's mom at a bar when he was 23 and scared and looking for something to hold on to. We were kids, Noah said one night, sitting on his porch with Lila beside him. We had no idea what we were doing, and when she got pregnant, we thought, I don't know, we thought love would be enough. But it wasn't, Lila said quietly. No, it wasn't. Do you regret it? Having Eli? Never. But yeah, I regret thinking I could make it work just by wanting it to. Lila was quiet for a moment, then said, I don't think wanting something is ever a mistake. Even if it doesn't work out? Especially then. Noah looked at her, and in the dim light from the porch, he saw something in her expression that made his chest ache. What about you? He asked. You ever been in love? Lila hesitated. I don't know. How can you not know? Because I don't remember. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. There's this gap, right? 6 months. And sometimes I get these flashes, a face, a voice, a feeling, but I don't know if they're real or if my brain is just filling in the blanks. That must be terrifying. It is. She turned to look at him. But being with you, it feels like I'm close to something. Like if I just wait long enough, it'll all click into place. Noah reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. And if it doesn't? Then at least I tried. They sat there in the quiet, the night stretching out around them, and Noah realized something that scared him more than he wanted to admit. He was falling for her. Not because she was beautiful or mysterious or different from anyone he'd ever met, but because when he was with her, he felt like he mattered, like he was more than just a dad, more than just a guy with a toolbox and a mortgage. He was Noah, and that was enough. The first time Lila met Eli was an accident. Noah had planned to keep them separate for a while longer, to make sure this thing between him and Lila was real before he brought his son into it. But plans, Noah was learning, had a way of falling apart. It was a Saturday morning. Eli was supposed to be at his mom's, but she'd called at the last minute with some excuse about her boyfriend's family being in town. So Noah was making pancakes and trying not to be annoyed when the doorbell rang. Eli ran to answer it before Noah could stop him. Hi, Eli said brightly. Are you here to see my dad? Noah's stomach dropped. He walked into the living room to find Lila standing in the doorway, looking just as surprised as he felt. Hey, she said. Hey! Noah glanced at Eli, then back at Lila. I thought we were meeting later. We were, but I finished early and thought I'd surprise you. Surprise, Noah said weakly. Eli tugged on Noah's shirt. Dad, who is she? This is Lila, Noah said. She's a friend. A friend? Eli looked skeptical. Like how Uncle Marcus is a friend? Not exactly. Lila crouched down to Eli's level, smiling. Hi, Eli. Your dad's told me a lot about you. Really? Eli's face lit up. What did he say? That you're smart and funny and really good at building things. Eli beamed. I built a spaceship out of Legos. Want to see? I'd love to. Before Noah could intervene, Eli grabbed Lila's hand and dragged her toward his room, chattering away about rocket ships and dinosaurs and all the things 6-year-olds found important. Noah followed, his heart pounding. This was it. This was the moment he'd been trying to avoid, the moment where his carefully separated worlds collided. But as he watched Lila sit on the floor of Eli's room, admiring a Lego spaceship that was missing half its pieces, something shifted. She didn't look out of place. She looked like she belonged, and that terrified him more than anything. After Lila left, Eli climbed onto the couch next to Noah and asked, Do you like her? Noah looked down at his son. What? Lila, do you like her? She's nice. That's not what I asked, Noah sighed. Yeah, buddy, I like her. Good. Eli snuggled closer. I like her too. Yeah? Yeah, she's pretty, and she didn't treat me like a baby. Noah smiled despite himself. No, she didn't. Are you going to marry her? Whoa, slow down. Why? Mom's boyfriend asked her to marry him. You should get married too. Noah's stomach twisted. What? Mom told me last weekend. She said they're getting married in the summer. Noah felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Did she now? Yeah, and she said I might get a new brother or sister soon. Great, Noah muttered. Eli looked up at him, his expression suddenly serious. Are you mad? No, buddy, I'm not mad. You look mad. Noah forced himself to smile. I'm just surprised, that's all. But inside, he was reeling. His ex was getting remarried, starting a new family, moving on in a way that made Noah's life feel small and stagnant by comparison. And suddenly, the thing with Lila felt even more important, because she was the first person in years who'd made him believe that maybe, just maybe, he could have something more. He just hoped he wasn't setting himself up to lose it. So, that night, after Eli was asleep, Noah called Lila. Hey, she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. Miss me already? Maybe. Noah leaned back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling. I'm sorry about today. I didn't mean for you to meet him like that. It's okay. He's great, Noah. You should be proud. I am. He asked if we were getting married. Noah laughed, embarrassed. Yeah, he does that. It's sweet. It's mortifying. Lila was quiet for a moment, then said, Would it be so terrible if we were? Noah's breath caught. Lila, I'm not saying now. I'm just saying, would it? No, Noah admitted. It wouldn't. Good. They talked for another hour about nothing and everything until Noah's eyes started to close and Lila's voice became a soft hum in his ear. I should let you sleep, she said finally. Yeah. Noah? Yeah. I'm glad you let me in. Noah smiled in the dark. Me too. And as he hung up and set the phone on the nightstand, he realized something that both thrilled and terrified him. He was falling in love with Lila Hart, and he had no idea if she was falling for him or for the ghost of whoever he used to be in the life she couldn't remember. Either way, it was too late to stop now. 2 months passed like water through his fingers. Noah didn't notice at first, the way Lila had woven herself into the fabric of his life, the way Eli started asking when she was coming over before Noah even mentioned her name, the way his truck seemed to drive itself to her apartment on nights when the house felt too quiet and the silence too loud. They were careful. They didn't rush. But somewhere between the coffee dates and the late-night phone calls and the Sunday mornings when Lila showed up with donuts and sat on his kitchen floor playing dinosaurs with Eli, Noah stopped pretending this was temporary. This was real. and that scared the hell out of him. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything started to unravel. Noah was under the sink at a client's house, wrestling with a pipe that had clearly been installed by someone who thought plumbing was more of a suggestion than a science, when his phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Noah swore under his breath and pulled himself out from under the sink, wiping his hands on his jeans before checking the screen. 3 texts from Lila. Can we talk? It's important, please. Noah's stomach dropped. In the 2 months they'd been together, Lila had never texted like that. She was always measured, always calm. This felt different. He called her immediately. She picked up on the first ring. Noah! Her voice was tight, strained. What's wrong? He asked, already packing up his tools. I need to see you. Can you meet me at my place? When? Now, if you can. Noah glanced at the half-finished sink, then at his watch. He had another job in an hour, but the way Lila's voice cracked on the word now made his chest tighten. Yeah, he said. I'll be there in 20. Thank you. She hung up before he could ask anything else. Noah drove faster than he should have, his mind running through a dozen scenarios, each worse than the last. She was sick. She was leaving. She'd remembered something about her past that didn't include him. By the time he pulled up to her building, his hands were shaking. He took the elevator to the 23rd floor, and when he knocked on her door, it opened immediately. Lila stood there, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying. What happened? Noah asked, stepping inside. She closed the door and turned to face him, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something in. I remembered something, she said quietly. Noah's heart stopped. What? A face. A name. She took a shaky breath. You. The world tilted. What are you talking about? Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lila walked to the couch and sat down, her hands trembling in her lap. I've been seeing a therapist. For the memory loss. She's been helping me work through fragments, trying to piece things together. And today something clicked. Noah sat down beside her, his pulse pounding in his ears. What did you remember? 3 years ago, before the accident, there was a night I was at a diner, late. I don't remember why I was there, but I was upset. And there was a man. He was sitting alone at the counter, and he looked broken, like he'd lost everything. Noah felt the blood drain from his face. I talked to him, Lila continued, her voice shaking. I don't remember what I said, but I remember the way he looked at me, like I'd just pulled him back from the edge of something. Lila, it was you, Noah. She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. It was you. I know it was. Noah couldn't breathe. He stood up, backing away from her like she'd just set him on fire. No, he said. No, that's not. I remember your eyes, the way you held your coffee cup, the scar on your hand. She pointed to the thin white line that ran across his knuckles, the one he'd gotten fixing a fence when Eli was a baby. I didn't know what it meant until today, but it was you. Noah's mind was racing, pulling him back to a night he'd buried so deep he'd almost convinced himself it hadn't happened. 3 years ago. The worst night of his life. He'd just found out his ex was moving across the state with her new boyfriend. She wanted to take Eli, said Noah wasn't stable enough, wasn't present enough, wasn't enough. And Noah, who'd spent 5 years holding himself together with duct tape and sheer willpower, had finally cracked. He'd driven to a diner in the middle of nowhere and sat at the counter, staring at a cup of coffee he couldn't drink, trying to figure out how to keep living when it felt like everything that mattered was being ripped away. And then she'd sat down next to him. A woman. Young. Beautiful in a way that didn't match the fluorescent lights and cracked vinyl booths. She'd ordered tea and asked if he was okay, and Noah had told her the truth. He told her everything. About Eli. About his ex. About how he didn't know if he was strong enough to fight for his son and win. And she'd looked at him with those same dark eyes he'd been staring into for the past 2 months and said, "You're stronger than you think. Don't give up." He'd never seen her again. Until now. It was you, Noah whispered, the realization hitting him like a freight train. Lila nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But when I saw you that first night at the penthouse, something felt familiar, and I couldn't let it go. Noah sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. This doesn't make sense. I know. You don't remember anything else? Just that night? Pieces, fragments, but nothing concrete. She reached for his hand and Noah let her take it. What happened after that night, after the diner? Noah exhaled slowly, his chest tight. I went home. I called a lawyer, I fought for custody, and I won. Because of what I said. Maybe. I don't know. He looked at her, his eyes burning. I was ready to give up, and then you showed up and told me not to. So yeah. Maybe. Lila's face crumpled. I don't understand how this is possible. How we ended up here, together. I don't either. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of the revelation pressing down on them like a physical thing. What do we do now? Lila asked finally. Noah didn't have an answer, because the truth was, he didn't know if this changed anything, or if it changed everything. All he knew was that the woman sitting next to him had saved his life once without even knowing it, and now he was terrified of losing her. We figure it out, he said quietly. Together. Lila nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay. Okay. But as Noah pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. More she didn't remember. More he didn't know. And whatever it was coming. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in his head. The diner, the woman, the way she'd looked at him like she could see straight through to the part of him that was breaking. He'd thought about that night 100 times over the years, wondered who she was, where she'd come from, why she'd cared enough about a stranger to say the exact words he needed to hear. And now he knew. It was Lila. Except it wasn't. Not really. Because the Lila he knew now didn't remember that night, didn't remember him. She was a different person, shaped by the accident, by the gaps in her memory, by the life she'd rebuilt from scratch. So who was he in love with? The woman who'd saved him 3 years ago? Or the woman she'd become after forgetting she ever had? The question gnawed at him, and by the time the sun came up, Noah still didn't have an answer. He got Eli ready for school in a daze, going through the motions, packing lunch, tying shoes, brushing hair, while his mind churned. Dad? Noah blinked, realizing Eli was staring at him. Yeah, buddy? You look sad. I'm not sad. You look sad. Noah forced a smile. I'm just tired. Eli didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. He just grabbed his backpack and headed for the door, and Noah followed, grateful for the routine that kept him moving forward, even when he didn't know which direction to go. After drop-off, Noah sat in his truck in the school parking lot and called Lila. She answered immediately. Hey. Hey. Noah rubbed his face, exhausted. You sleep? Not really. Me neither. There was a pause, and then Lila said, I'm sorry, Noah. I didn't mean to drop this on you like that. I didn't know how else to say it. It's not your fault. It feels like it is. It's not. Noah exhaled slowly. I just need time to process, to figure out what this means. Do you regret it? Us? No. The word came out faster than he expected. No, I don't regret it. I don't know how to separate what we have now from what happened then. Maybe you don't have to. What do you mean? Maybe it doesn't matter, Lila said quietly. Maybe the fact that we found each other again, however it happened, is enough. Noah wanted to believe that. He really did. But doubt had a way of burrowing deep, and right now it was all he could feel. I need to think, he said finally. I just need some time. Okay. Lila's voice was small, fragile. Take all the time you need. I'm not leaving. I know. She paused. I'll be here when you're ready. They hung up, and Noah sat there in the silence, feeling like the ground beneath him had shifted and he was still trying to find his footing. The next few days were strange. Noah went to work. He picked up Eli from school. He cooked dinner and helped with homework and read bedtime stories. But the whole time, his mind was somewhere else. He didn't call Lila. She didn't call him. And the space between them grew wider with every passing hour. On the 4th day, Eli asked the question Noah had been dreading. Is Lila coming over this weekend? They were sitting at the kitchen table, Eli coloring a picture of a spaceship, while Noah pretended to look at bills he couldn't focus on. I don't know, buddy, Noah said carefully. Eli looked up, his crayon paused mid-stroke. Did you guys have a fight? Not exactly. Then why isn't she coming? Noah set down the bill he'd been staring at and looked at his son. Sometimes adults need space to think about things. It doesn't mean we're mad at each other. It just means we need time. Time for what? To figure out if we're doing the right thing. Eli frowned. Don't you like her anymore? I do. I really do. Then why do you need to think about it? Noah didn't have a good answer for that, at least not one a 6-year-old would understand. It's complicated, Eli. Grown-ups always say that, because it's true. Eli went back to coloring, but Noah could see the worry in his small face, the fear that maybe this thing he'd started to count on was going to disappear. And that broke Noah's heart more than anything else, because Eli had already lost too much. His mom was barely present. His stability depended entirely on Noah not screwing up. And now, Noah had brought someone into his life, someone Eli liked, someone who felt safe, and he was already pulling away. That night, after Eli was asleep, Noah sat on the porch with a beer he didn't drink and finally let himself admit the truth. He was scared that Lila's feelings for him weren't real, that they were just echoes of a memory she couldn't fully grasp. Scared that if she ever remembered everything, she'd realize she didn't actually want him. Scared that he was setting himself up for the kind of heartbreak he didn't know if he could survive. But more than that, he was scared of losing her. Because in the 2 months they'd been together, Lila had become something Noah didn't think he'd ever have again. Hope. And hope, he was learning, was the most dangerous thing of all. It was Lila who broke the silence. On Saturday morning, she showed up at his door unannounced, holding 2 cups of coffee and looking like she hadn't slept in days. I know you said you needed space, she said before Noah could say anything, but I can't do this anymore. I can't sit around waiting for you to decide if I'm worth the risk. Noah opened the door wider, letting her in. Lila, no. Let me finish. She set the coffee down on the counter and turned to face him, her eyes blazing. I get that this is complicated. I get that you're scared, but so am I. And I didn't come here to make this harder. I came here because I need you to know something. What? I don't care if I remembered you from that night at the diner or not. I don't care if some part of my brain recognized you and that's why I felt drawn to you. Because the truth is, Noah, I'm not falling for you because of the past. I'm falling for you because of now. Noah's breath caught. I'm falling for you because you're kind and steady and you show up for your son even when it's hard. I'm falling for you because you make me feel like I'm not broken, like the gaps in my memory don't define me. Her voice cracked. And I'm falling for you because when I'm with you, I feel whole. Noah stood there, frozen, her words hitting him like a tidal wave. So if you need time, take it, Lila continued, her voice shaking. But don't tell yourself this isn't real. Because it is. At least for me. She turned to leave, but Noah grabbed her hand. Wait. Lila stopped, looking back at him with tears in her eyes. I'm falling for you too, Noah said quietly. And that terrifies me. Because I've spent so long protecting myself, protecting Eli from getting hurt. And now you're here, and I don't know how to do this without being scared. You don't have to stop being scared, Lila said softly. You just have to trust me anyway. Noah pulled her closer, his hands trembling as he cupped her face. What if you remember everything and realize this was a mistake? What if I don't? What if I'm not enough? You are. Lila's voice was fierce now, certain. You've always been enough. And then Noah kissed her. Not tentatively, not carefully, but like he was done running, done hiding, done pretending he could live without her. When they finally pulled apart, Lila rested her forehead against his, her breath shaky. I'm all in, Noah, she whispered. Are you? Noah didn't hesitate. Yeah, I'm all in. Things shifted after that. Not back to the way they were, because they couldn't go back, but forward, into something deeper. Something that felt less like testing the waters and more like diving in head first. Lila started spending more time at Noah's house. She'd show up on weeknights with takeout and help Eli with his homework. She'd curl up on the couch next to Noah while they watched movies neither of them paid attention to. She'd stay over sometimes, and Noah would wake up to find her making pancakes in his kitchen like she'd been doing it her whole life. Eli loved her, and Noah was trying not to overthink it. But 2 weeks later, something happened that shattered the fragile peace they'd built. It was a Tuesday evening. Noah was at a job site, replacing a busted water heater in a basement that smelled like mold and regret when Lila called. "Hey," he said, wedging the phone between his ear and shoulder. "What's up?" "I need to tell you something." Her voice was tight again, strained. Noah froze. "What's wrong?" "I went to see my therapist today. We did a session where she tried to help me access more of the lost memories. And Noah, I remembered something else." His stomach dropped. "What?" "The accident, the night it happened." Lila's voice cracked. "I was driving, and I wasn't alone." Noah set down his wrench, his heart pounding. "Who was with you?" "I don't know. I can't see their face. But I remember arguing. I remember crying. And I remember—" She took a shaky breath. "I remember saying your name." The world went silent. "What?" Noah whispered. "I said your name, Noah, right before the crash. I don't know why. I don't know what it means, but you were there, in my mind, in that moment." Noah felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "That doesn't make sense," he said, his voice hollow. "We only met once, at the diner, and that was months before your accident." "I know, but I said your name, I'm sure of it. Lila, that's not possible." "Then explain it to me." Her voice broke. "Explain how I knew you before I knew you. Explain how I ended up in your life again after losing everything. Explain how this feels like fate when neither of us believes in it." Noah didn't have an explanation, because none of this made sense. And the more he tried to piece it together, the less he understood. "I'm coming over," he said, finally. "Okay. We'll figure this out." "Okay." But as Noah packed up his tools and headed for his truck, he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever they were about to uncover was going to change everything, and he wasn't sure either of them was ready for it. Hassem. By the time Noah got to Leela's apartment, it was almost 9. She opened the door before he could knock, her face pale and drawn. "Come in," she said quietly. Noah stepped inside and they sat on the couch in silence for a moment, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. "Tell me everything," Noah said finally. "Everything you remember." Lila took a deep breath. "I was driving at night, it was raining, and I was upset, crying, I think. There was someone in the passenger seat, but I can't see their face. We were arguing about something, and then I said your name. I don't know if I was talking to you or about you, but it was your name, I'm sure of it." "And then what?" "Then the headlights, and the crash, and then nothing. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later, and 6 months of my life were just gone." Noah ran his hands through his hair, trying to make sense of it. "What were you doing that night? Where were you going?" "I don't know. The police report said I was driving on the highway, about 20 miles outside the city, but they never figured out why." "And the person in the car with you?" "They never found anyone. The police said I was alone." Noah's blood ran cold. "But you remember someone being there." "I do." "Then where did they go?" Lila shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know, Noah. I don't know anything." Noah pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried, but his mind was racing. This wasn't just about a chance encounter at a diner anymore. This was something bigger, something neither of them understood. And the deeper they dug, the more Noah feared they were going to uncover something that would tear them apart. That night, Noah couldn't stop thinking about Lila's words. "I said your name." He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember if there was anything else, anything he'd missed about that night at the diner 3 years ago. She'd been upset. He remembered that. She'd ordered tea and sat next to him and asked if he was okay. And he'd told her about Eli, about the custody battle, about how he was barely holding it together. But had she told him anything? Noah closed his eyes, forcing himself back into that moment. She'd been wearing a gray coat, her hair had been shorter. She'd had a bruise on her wrist, small, faint, like she'd bumped into something. And when she left, she'd touched his shoulder and said, "You're stronger than you think. Don't give up. That was it. That was all he remembered. But what if there was more? What if she'd told him her name and he'd just forgotten? What if they'd talked longer than he remembered? What if Noah's phone buzzed, pulling him out of his spiral? It was a text from Lila. I can't sleep. Can I call you? He dialed her immediately. Hey, she said, her voice soft and tired. Hey, I'm sorry. I know it's late. Don't apologize. There was a pause, and then Lila said, Do you think we're crazy, trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense? Maybe, Noah admitted, but I don't care. Why not? Because even if we never figure out what happened, I know one thing for sure. What's that? I don't want to lose you. Lila let out a shaky breath. I don't want to lose you either. They stayed on the phone for another hour, talking about nothing and everything, until Lila's breathing evened out and Noah realized she'd fallen asleep. He didn't hang up. He just listened to her breathe, the sound grounding him in a way nothing else could. And somewhere in the quiet, Noah made a decision. He was done being scared. Whatever the truth was, whatever they uncovered, he was going to face it. With her. Because love, he was learning, wasn't about having all the answers. It was about choosing someone anyway. And Noah had already made his choice. Now he just had to hope it was enough. The answer came from the last place Noah expected. It was a Saturday morning, 3 days after Lila's revelation about the accident. Noah was in the garage trying to fix Eli's bike chain when his phone rang. The number was local, but unfamiliar. Hello? Is this Noah Bennett? A woman's voice, professional, clipped. Yeah, who's this? My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a neurologist at St. Catherine's Medical Center. I'm calling about Lila Hart. Noah's heart stopped. Is she okay? She's fine. But she listed you as an emergency contact, and I wanted to reach out because something unusual has come up in her recent therapy sessions. Noah set down the wrench, his hands suddenly unsteady. What do you mean, unusual? I can't discuss details over the phone. But if you're available, I'd like to meet with both of you. There's something you need to know about her accident. When? Today, if possible. 2 o'clock? Noah glanced at his watch. It was barely 11. I'll be there. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I'll see you then. She hung up, and Noah stood there in the garage, grease on his hands and fear in his chest, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. He called Lila immediately. Did you get a call from Dr. Chen? He asked. Yeah. Lila's voice was tight. You're going? Of course I'm going. Are you? I don't know if I want to hear what she has to say. Lila, what if it's bad, Noah? What if she tells me something that changes everything? Then we deal with it, together. There was a long pause, and then Lila said quietly, Okay, I'll meet you there. St. Catherine's was a sprawling complex on the edge of the city, all glass and steel and the kind of sterile brightness that made Noah's skin crawl. He met Lila in the parking lot, and she looked as terrified as he felt. You ready? He asked, taking her hand. No. Me neither. They walked inside together, their fingers intertwined, and took the elevator to the 4th floor. Dr. Chen's office was at the end of a long hallway, and when they knocked, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and graying hair opened the door. Mr. Bennett, Miss Hart, thank you for coming. She gestured to 2 chairs across from her desk. Please sit. They sat. Dr. Chen settled into her own chair, folding her hands on the desk in front of her. I want to start by saying that what I'm about to tell you is not something I share lightly, but given the recent developments in Ms. Hart's memory recovery, I believe it's necessary. Noah's stomach twisted. What developments? Dr. Chen looked at Lila. You've been experiencing what we call spontaneous memory retrieval, fragments of your lost time surfacing without warning, correct? Yes, Lila said. And in your most recent session, you mentioned remembering a name, Noah Bennett. You remembered saying it during the accident. That's right. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. What I'm about to tell you may be difficult to hear. 3 years ago, on the night of your accident, you weren't alone in the car. Lila's breath hitched. I knew it. I knew someone was there. The police report states you were alone because by the time first responders arrived, the other person had left the scene. But the hospital records tell a different story. Noah leaned forward. What do you mean? Dr. Chen pulled a file from her desk and opened it. When you were brought in, Ms. Hart, you were unconscious and severely injured. But before you lost consciousness at the scene, you spoke to the paramedics. You told them a name. What name? Lila whispered. Noah Bennett. The room went silent. Noah felt like he'd been punched in the chest. That's not possible. I didn't even know her. That's what I thought too, Dr. Chen said. But then I did some digging, and I found something in the hospital records, a visitor log from the day after the accident. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. Noah stared at it, his vision blurring. There, in neat handwriting, was his name, his signature, time-stamped at 3:47 p.m. I was here, Noah said, his voice hollow. According to the records, yes. I don't remember this. I don't remember any of this. Lila grabbed his hand, her grip tight. Noah, what's going on? Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. I can't explain it. But what I can tell you is that your connection goes deeper than either of you realized. And whatever happened between you 3 years ago, it was significant enough that your subconscious held on to it, even when your conscious mind couldn't. Noah's head was spinning. This doesn't make sense. No, Dr. Chen agreed. It doesn't. But the human brain is a strange thing, Mr. Bennett. Trauma, memory, emotion, they're all connected in ways we don't fully understand. It's possible that you experienced some form of dissociative amnesia, that the events surrounding Ms. Hart's accident were so distressing that your mind simply blocked them out. Why would they be distressing? Noah demanded. I didn't even know her. Are you sure about that? The question hung in the air like a blade. Noah looked at Lila and she looked back at him, and neither of them had an answer. I want you both to think carefully, Dr. Chen said. Is there anything at all, that might explain this? A mutual friend? A shared event? Anything that might have brought you together before that night at the diner? Noah racked his brain, searching for something, anything, that would make sense. But there was nothing. Just a black hole where answers should have been. I don't know, he said finally. I don't know. Dr. Chen nodded. Then I suggest you start looking, because whatever happened 3 years ago, it's not finished, and until you uncover the truth, it's going to keep pulling you back. They left the hospital in a daze. Noah drove in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. Lila sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, her face pale and drawn. Say something, Noah said finally. I don't know what to say. Neither do I. Do you really not remember going to the hospital? No, I swear, Lila, I don't remember any of it. Then how did you end up there? I don't know. The words came out harsher than he intended, and Lila flinched. Noah exhaled slowly, forcing himself to calm down. I'm sorry, I don't understand what's happening. Me neither. Lila turned to look at him, her eyes wet. But we have to figure it out. Because if we don't, this is going to destroy us. Noah knew she was right, but he didn't know where to start. That night, Noah couldn't sit still. He paced the living room while Eli slept, his mind racing through every possibility, every scenario, every fragment of memory that might hold a clue. 3 years ago, the custody battle, the diner, the woman who told him not to give up. And then, what? Noah grabbed his laptop and pulled up his calendar from 3 years ago. He scrolled through the entries looking for anything that might jog his memory. Work, appointments, court dates. Nothing. He checked his bank statements, his emails, his text messages. Still nothing. And then buried in a folder of old photos, he found something that made his blood run cold. It was a picture of Eli, taken at the park. Noah didn't remember taking it, but the date stamp was clear, 2 days after Lila's accident. And in the background, blurred but unmistakable, was a woman sitting on a bench. Dark hair, gray coat, Lila. Noah's hands shook as he zoomed in on the photo, his heart pounding. It was her. She'd been there, at the park. 2 days after the accident, which meant she hadn't been in the hospital. Which meant... Noah's phone buzzed, snapping him out of his spiral. It was a text from Lila. I found something. Can you come over? Noah didn't hesitate. He called his neighbor to watch Eli and was out the door in under 5 minutes. When he got to Lila's apartment, she was waiting for him with a box in her hands. "What is that?" Noah asked. "My things. From the accident. The hospital gave them back to me when I was discharged, but I never went through them. I couldn't." She set the box on the coffee table and opened it. Inside were clothes, torn and blood-stained, a phone with a shattered screen, a wallet, and at the bottom, a small notebook. Lila picked it up, her hands trembling. "I forgot this was in here." She opened it and Noah saw pages filled with handwriting, neat, careful, deliberate. "What is it?" he asked. "A journal. I used to keep one, but I stopped after the accident because I couldn't remember what I'd written." She flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the words, and then she stopped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What?" She handed him the notebook, pointing to an entry dated 3 months before the accident. Noah read the words, and his world tilted. "Met someone today. A man at a coffee shop. We talked for hours. He told me about his son, about how hard it is to be a single parent. He didn't say his name, but I felt like I knew him, like we'd met before. I can't explain it, but I think about him all the time now. I keep hoping I'll see him again." Noah's hands were shaking. This was before the diner. "Yeah," Lila flipped to the next entry. "And look at this." The next entry was dated a week later. "Saw him again. At the park. He was with his son. I didn't go up to him, I just watched. He looked tired, but happy. His son is beautiful. I wonder if he remembers me." Noah's chest tightened. "You were following me?" "I don't remember any of this, Noah, I swear." He kept reading, entry after entry, each one more unsettling than the last. "I can't stop thinking about him. It's like he's stuck in my head. I don't even know his name. I found out where he works. I drove by today. I didn't go in. I just wanted to see him. I know this is crazy. I know I should stop, but I can't." And then, the final entry, dated the night of the accident. "I told him. I finally told him. And he looked at me like I was insane. Maybe I am. Maybe this whole thing has been in my head. But I had to know. I had to know if he felt it too. He said no. He said I needed help. And now I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm losing my mind." Noah set the notebook down, his hands shaking. "You knew me," he said quietly, "before the diner, before the accident. You knew me." Lila's face was pale, her eyes wide with shock. "I don't remember. I don't remember any of it." "Then who was I to you, Lila? Why were you following me? Why were you so obsessed with me?" "I don't know." Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know, Noah, but I need you to believe me when I say I'm not that person anymore. Whatever I was then, whatever I felt, it's gone. I don't remember it." Noah stood up, backing away from her. "How am I supposed to trust that? How am I supposed to know this whole thing isn't just some extension of whatever you were doing 3 years ago?" "Because I love you," Lila shouted, her voice raw. "Not because of some obsession, not because of the past, but because of who you are now, because of who we are together." Noah wanted to believe her. He really did. But the evidence was right there in front of him, written in her own handwriting, and he didn't know what to do with it. "I need to go," he said quietly. "Noah, please. I just need time. I need to think." He turned and walked toward the door, and Lila didn't try to stop him. But as he stepped into the hallway, he heard her voice one last time. "I'm not her anymore, Noah. Please believe me." Noah didn't answer. He just left. The next few days were the hardest of Noah's life. He threw himself into work, taking every job that came his way, trying to outrun the questions that haunted him. Who was Lila 3 years ago? Why had she been so fixated on him? And what had happened the night of the accident that made her say his name? Eli noticed something was wrong, but Noah deflected every question with forced smiles and half-hearted reassurances. Lila texted him once. "I'm here when you're ready to talk." Noah didn't respond. He didn't know what to say, because the truth was, he was terrified. Terrified that everything they'd built was based on a lie. Terrified that Lila's feelings for him weren't real, that they were just echoes of an obsession she couldn't remember. Terrified that he'd fallen in love with someone who didn't actually exist. But on the 4th day, something happened that changed everything. Noah was at a job site, replacing a circuit breaker in an old house, when his phone rang. It was Dr. Chen. "Mr. Bennett, I need you to come back to the hospital, now. Why? What's going on? I found something that changes everything. What is it? I can't explain over the phone, but you need to hear this, both of you. Noah's heart pounded. I'll be there in 20. He called Lila, and for the first time in 4 days, she answered. Dr. Chen called me too, she said quietly. You going? Yeah, are you? Yeah. There was a pause, and then Lila said, I miss you, Noah. Noah closed his eyes, his chest tight. I miss you too. Do you still love me? I don't know what I feel right now. That's fair. They hung up and Noah drove to the hospital, his mind racing. Whatever Dr. Chen had found, it was big enough to demand both of them. And Noah had a feeling that once he heard it, nothing would ever be the same. Dr. Chen was waiting for them in her office, and this time she looked shaken. Sit, she said, her voice tight. They sat. I spent the last few days reviewing every piece of documentation related to Ms. Hart's accident. Hospital records, police reports, witness statements, and I found something that was buried in the file, something that was never followed up on. What? Lila asked. Dr. Chen pulled out a document and set it on the desk. The paramedics who responded to the scene filed a report stating that when they arrived, there was evidence of a second person in the vehicle, blood on the passenger seat, a phone that didn't belong to you. But by the time the police arrived, both were gone. Noah's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying someone else was in that car, and whoever it was, they didn't want to be found. Who? Lila whispered. I don't know, but I found the phone records from the device that was left behind, and there's a call log from that night, one call, made just minutes before the crash. She slid another piece of paper across the desk. Noah stared at the number, and his entire world collapsed, because he recognized it. It was his number. That's my phone, he said, his voice barely audible. Dr. Chen nodded. Someone in that car called you, Mr. Bennett, and based on the timeline, you answered. Noah felt like he was going to be sick. I don't remember that, he said. I don't remember any of this. Then we need to figure out why, Dr. Chen said, because until you do, you're never going to understand what really happened that night. Lila turned to Noah, her eyes wide with fear. Who was in the car with me? Noah shook his head, his mind spinning. I don't know. But deep down, he had a terrible feeling that he did, and the truth was going to destroy everything. Itasitam. They left the hospital in silence, and this time, Noah didn't drive away. He sat in the parking lot with Lila beside him, both of them staring at nothing, trying to process what they'd just learned. I called you, Lila said finally. The night of the accident, I called you and you answered. Apparently. Then what did we talk about? I don't know, Lila. I don't remember. Then we have to figure it out. Noah turned to look at her, and for the first time in days, he saw the woman he'd fallen in love with. Not the woman from the journal, but the woman sitting next to him now. Scared, vulnerable, real. What if the truth is worse than not knowing? He asked quietly. Then we deal with it, Lila said, together. Noah exhaled slowly, then reached for her hand. Okay, he said. Let's find out what really happened. And as they sat there, hands intertwined, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that whatever they were about to uncover was going to test them in ways they couldn't imagine. But for the first time in days, he wasn't facing it alone. And that had to count for something. Over the next week, Noah and Lila became detectives of their own lives. They went through everything: phone records, bank statements, emails, old photos. They retraced Noah's steps from 3 years ago, visiting every place he'd been, trying to jog his memory. And slowly, piece by piece, fragments started to surface. Noah remembered a call. Late at night. A woman's voice, frantic, begging him to meet her. He remembered getting in his truck, driving toward the highway. He remembered the rain, and then nothing. It's like there's a wall in my head, Noah said one night, sitting at Lila's kitchen table. Every time I get close to it, my brain just shuts down. Maybe that's your mind protecting you, Lila said, from whatever happened. Or maybe I did something I don't want to remember. Lila reached across the table, taking his hand. Whatever it is, we'll face it. I promise. Noah wanted to believe her. But the closer they got to the truth, the more he feared what they'd find. And then, on a rainy Thursday night, the final piece fell into place. Noah was going through an old box of paperwork when he found a receipt, dated the night of the accident. A gas station, 20 miles outside the city, the same stretch of highway where Lila had crashed. He showed it to Lila, and her face went pale. "You were there," she whispered. "You were there that night." "I must have been. Then why don't you remember?" Noah didn't have an answer, but as they sat there, staring at the receipt, the rain pounding against the windows, Noah felt something shift in his mind. A memory, buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed, started to claw its way to the surface. And when it finally broke through, Noah understood. He understood everything. "I was in the car," he said quietly. Lila stared at him. "What?" "I was in the car with you, Lila, that night. I was the one who called the paramedics. I was the one who left before the police arrived." "Why?" Noah's voice cracked. "Because I thought I'd killed you." And as the truth spilled out, raw and ugly and real, Noah finally understood why his mind had buried it. Because some memories were too painful to hold, and some truths were too heavy to carry alone. But now, sitting across from Lila with tears streaming down both their faces, Noah knew one thing for certain. They'd come too far to turn back now, and whatever came next, they'd face it together. Lila didn't move. She just stared at Noah, her face drained of color, her lips parted like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. "Say something," Noah whispered. "You were in the car," she repeated, her voice hollow. "You were there." "Yes." "And you left me." The accusation hung in the air between them, sharp and unforgiving. "I thought you were dead, Lila." Noah's voice cracked. "I checked for a pulse. I couldn't find one. The car was wrapped around a tree, the airbag had deployed, and you weren't moving. There was blood everywhere. I panicked." "So you just left?" "I called 911. I stayed on the phone until I heard the sirens, and then I—" He stopped, his hands shaking. "I couldn't be there when they arrived. I had Eli. I had a custody hearing in 2 days. If they found me at the scene, if they thought I was involved—" "You were involved!" "I know," Noah shouted, and the force of it startled them both. He lowered his voice, his eyes burning. "I know. And I've lived with that guilt every single day since. I just didn't remember it was you." Lila stood abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. "How is that even possible? How do you forget something like that?" "I don't know. Trauma, maybe. My brain just shut it down. Buried it so deep I convinced myself it never happened." "But it did happen." "Yeah, it did." Lila stopped pacing and turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why was I calling you that night, Noah? What did I want?" Noah closed his eyes, forcing himself back into that memory, the one he'd spent 3 years running from. "You were upset," he said quietly. "You called me, crying, saying you needed to see me, that you had to talk to me. I told you no. I told you I didn't know you, that you needed to stop calling, stop showing up, but you wouldn't listen. You said you'd prove it to me, prove that we were connected somehow." "Prove what?" "I don't know. You kept saying I'd understand if I just met you, just one more time, so I agreed. I told you to meet me at a gas station off the highway. Neutral ground. I thought if I showed up, told you face to face to leave me alone, you'd finally stop." Lila's face crumpled. "And then what? You showed up, you were frantic, talking about signs and fate and how we were supposed to find each other. I told you that you needed help, that whatever you thought was happening between us wasn't real, and you—" Noah's voice broke. "You looked at me like I'd just destroyed you." "And then?" "You got back in your car. You were crying so hard you could barely see. I tried to stop you, told you not to drive, but you wouldn't listen. You just drove off. And I stood there, watching your taillights disappear into the rain, and I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. No. 10 minutes later, you called me again, screaming. You said you couldn't do this anymore, that you were sorry, that you just wanted it all to stop. And then I heard the crash. The room went silent except for the sound of Lila's ragged breathing. I got in my truck and drove as fast as I could, Noah continued, his voice barely above a whisper. When I found you, the car was totaled. The front end was completely caved in. You were slumped over the steering wheel, blood on your face, and you weren't moving. I pulled you out. I checked for a pulse. I couldn't find one. But I wasn't dead. I know that now. But in that moment, I thought you were. And I panicked. I called 911, told them where you were, and then I left. I convinced myself that staying would only make things worse, that if the police found me there, they'd think I caused the accident, that I'd lose Eli. So I ran. Lila sank back onto the couch, her hands covering her face. You let me believe I was alone. I didn't let you believe anything. You didn't remember. Because of you. She looked up at him, her eyes blazing. Because of what you said to me. Because you rejected me so completely that I got in a car and crashed it. That's not fair. Isn't it? Noah felt like he was being torn apart. You're right. It's my fault, all of it. I should have stopped you. I should have taken your keys. I should have done something other than stand there and watch you drive away. But I didn't. And I've hated myself for it every day since. Then why didn't you tell me, Lila demanded. When we met again, when you saw me at the penthouse, why didn't you say something? Because I didn't remember. Not until tonight. My brain buried it so deep that when I saw you, I didn't recognize you. I just felt drawn to you. Like I'd known you before but couldn't place where. That's convenient. It's the truth. Lila stood again, shaking her head. I don't know if I can believe you. Lila, I need you to leave. Noah's heart shattered. Please, let me explain. You already did. Now I need time to process it. Don't shut me out. Not now. You shut me out 3 years ago, Noah. You left me bleeding on the side of the road. So yeah, I think I'm entitled to some space. Noah wanted to argue, wanted to beg her to let him stay, but he could see it in her eyes, the walls going up, the door closing. So he left, and as he walked out into the rain, the same rain that had been falling the night of the accident, Noah wondered if this was how it ended, not with closure, but with the truth tearing them apart. Noah didn't go home. He drove aimlessly through the city, his mind a blur of guilt and regret and the overwhelming certainty that he'd just lost the only good thing he'd had in years. Eventually, he ended up at the diner, the same diner where he'd first met Lila 3 years ago, or thought he had. He sat at the counter, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and stared at the spot where she'd sat that night, the night she'd told him not to give up. Except now he knew the truth. That wasn't their first meeting. It was their second. And he'd been too broken to remember. You look like hell. Noah glanced up. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, was refilling his cup. Feel like it too, Noah muttered. Woman trouble? How'd you guess? It's always woman trouble. She leaned against the counter, studying him. You want my advice? Not really. I'm going to give it anyway. She smiled. Whatever you did, fix it. Don't sit here drowning in coffee and self-pity. Go to her. Apologize. Grovel if you have to, but don't let her go. What if she doesn't want me anymore? Then you fight for her anyway, because regret's a hell of a lot harder to live with than rejection. Noah stared at her, something in her words cutting through the fog in his mind. Thanks, he said quietly. Don't thank me. Just go. Noah left a 20 on the counter and walked out into the rain. He didn't know if Lila would listen, didn't know if she'd forgive him, but he had to try. Because the waitress was right. Regret was harder to live with than rejection, and Noah had already lived with enough regret to last a lifetime. When Noah got back to Lila's apartment, it was past midnight. He knocked on the door, half expecting her not to answer, but she did. She stood in the doorway, her eyes red and swollen, her face streaked with tears. I told you I needed space, she said, her voice hoarse. I know, but I can't leave things like this. Noah, please, just let me say one thing, and then I'll go, I promise. Lila hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him in. They stood in the living room, the silence stretching between them like a chasm. I'm sorry, Noah said finally. I'm sorry I left you that night. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder to stop you from driving. I'm sorry I buried the memory so deep that I couldn't face what I'd done. And I'm sorry that meeting me again put you through all of this. Lila's eyes filled with fresh tears. You don't get to apologize and expect everything to be okay. I know. You left me, Noah. You thought I was dead and you left. I know. How am I supposed to trust you after that? Noah took a shaky breath. You're not. Not right away. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to earn it back. Because I love you, Lila. Not because of the past. Not because of guilt. But because of who you are now. Because of who we are together. What if that's not enough? Then I'll live with that. But I'm not walking away again. Not without a fight. Lila looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. And then, slowly, she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. Noah held her tightly, burying his face in her hair, and for the first time in days he felt like he could breathe. I don't know if I can forgive you, she whispered. Not yet. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you not to give up on us. I don't want to give up, but I'm scared. Me too. They stood there holding each other in the quiet, and Noah realized something. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something harder, something that would require honesty and patience and a willingness to forgive things that felt unforgivable. But it was worth it, because she was worth it. But over the next few weeks, Noah and Lila rebuilt what had been broken. It wasn't easy. There were nights when Lila couldn't look at him without seeing the man who'd left her on the side of the road. There were nights when Noah couldn't sleep, haunted by the memory of her lifeless body in his arms. But they kept showing up. They talked. They fought. They cried. And slowly, piece by piece, they started to heal. Lila went back to therapy, working through the fragments of memory that still surfaced. And with Dr. Chen's help, she started to piece together a clearer picture of who she'd been 3 years ago. I was obsessed with you, she told Noah one night, sitting on his couch with a cup of tea in her hands. I don't know why. Dr. Chen thinks it was some kind of fixation, maybe triggered by seeing you at the diner that first time. She said it's not uncommon for people going through trauma to latch onto someone who represents stability. And I represented stability. You were a single dad doing everything on your own. You were strong, present, everything I wasn't. Noah frowned. What do you mean? Lila set down her tea, her expression distant. 3 years ago, I was a mess. I was in a relationship that was falling apart. My job was suffocating me. I felt like I was drowning, and I didn't know how to stop. And then I saw you, and for some reason you felt like a lifeline. But I didn't even know you. I know. But in my mind, you did. I convinced myself that we were connected, that if I could just make you see it, everything would make sense. That's not your fault, Lila. Isn't it? I stalked you. I showed up at your work. I called you in the middle of the night and begged you to meet me. And when you finally did, I pushed so hard that I drove myself off the road. You were struggling. You needed help. And instead I got amnesia. She laughed bitterly. Maybe that was the universe's way of giving me a clean slate. Noah reached for her hand. Or maybe it was a second chance. For both of us. Lila looked at him, her eyes searching his. Do you really believe that? Yeah, I do. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. I don't remember loving you back then, but I love you now. Is that enough? It's more than enough. Things started to feel normal again, or as normal as they could be given everything. Lila spent more time at Noah's house. She and Eli grew closer, their bond deepening with every shared dinner and Sunday morning pancake session. Noah introduced her to his sister, who was skeptical at first but warmed up after seeing how happy Noah was. And slowly, the shadow of the past started to fade. But then, 1 month after Noah's confession, something happened that brought it all back. It was a Saturday afternoon. Noah was in the garage working on Eli's bike when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Is this Noah Bennett? A man's voice, formal, official. Yeah, who's this? Detective Marcus Holloway. I'm with the state police. I need to ask you some questions about an accident that occurred 3 years ago. Noah's blood ran cold. What? A single vehicle collision on Route 47. The driver was a woman named Lila Hart. We recently reopened the case, and your name came up in connection with it. Noah's heart was pounding so hard he could barely hear. I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Bennett, we have phone records showing that Ms. Hart called you multiple times the night of the accident. We also have witness testimony placing you at the scene. Now, you can talk to me here, or I can bring you in for formal questioning. Your choice. Noah felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. I'll come in, he said quietly. Good. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Don't be late. The line went dead. Noah stood there, his phone still pressed to his ear, his mind racing. They knew. After 3 years, they knew. And now, everything he'd built, everything he and Lila had fought for, was about to come crashing down. Noah told Lila that night. They sat at her kitchen table, the weight of the phone call pressing down on them like a physical thing. "What are you going to tell them?" Lila asked, her voice tight. "The truth. The truth could destroy you, Noah. You left the scene of an accident. You didn't report it. They could charge you." "I know." "So what? You're just going to walk in there and confess? What else am I supposed to do? Lie." Lila's voice cracked. "Tell them you don't remember. Tell them anything other than the truth." "I'm not doing that." "Why not?" "Because I've spent 3 years running from this, and I'm done. I'm done lying. I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending it didn't happen." Lila stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "What about Eli? What happens to him if they arrest you?" Noah's chest tightened. He hadn't let himself think about that. "I don't know," he admitted. "Then maybe you should think about it before you throw your life away." "This isn't throwing my life away. This is finally taking responsibility." "It's not responsibility. It's self-destruction." Noah reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I can't watch you do this," she said quietly. "Lila, I can't. I can't sit here and watch you walk into that police station knowing you might not walk out." "Then don't, but I'm still going." Lila stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's mine to make." She looked at him for a long moment, her expression a mix of anger and heartbreak, and then she walked out of the room. Noah sat there alone, the silence swallowing him whole. Monday morning came too fast. Noah dropped Eli off at school, his stomach churning with dread. He'd barely slept, barely eaten. All he could think about was the detective's voice on the phone and the very real possibility that by the end of the day, his life would be over. He pulled into the police station parking lot at 8:45 and sat in his truck, staring at the building. This was it. The moment he'd been running from for 3 years, he thought about Eli, about the custody battle he'd fought so hard to win, about the life he'd built from nothing. And then he thought about Lila, about the truth she deserved, about the man he wanted to be. Noah took a deep breath and got out of the truck. Inside, Detective Holloway was waiting, a man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Bennett," he said, extending a hand. "Thanks for coming in." Noah shook it, his palm sweaty. "Yeah." They walked to a small interview room and Noah sat down, his heart pounding. Holloway pulled out a file and set it on the table. "Let's cut to the chase. I know you were at the scene of Lila Hart's accident. I know you called it in. And I know you left before first responders arrived. What I don't know is why." Noah swallowed hard. "I panicked." "Why?" "Because I thought she was dead. And I had a son. A custody hearing. I couldn't afford to be involved." "So you just left her there?" "I called 911. I made sure help was coming." "But you didn't stay." "No." Holloway leaned back in his chair, studying Noah. "You know what I think? I think there's more to this story. I think you and Ms. Hart had some kind of relationship. Maybe it went bad. Maybe things got heated. Maybe—" "No." Noah's voice was firm. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Noah took a deep breath and told him everything. The journal, the phone calls, the obsession, the night at the gas station, the crash. Holloway listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When Noah finished, the detective was quiet for a long moment. "That's quite a story," he said finally. "It's the truth." "Can you prove it?" "Phone records, the journal. Lila can corroborate." Holloway nodded slowly. "All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to verify your story. If it checks out, we'll close the case. If it doesn't—" He paused. "Well, let's hope it does." Noah exhaled shakily. "Am I free to go?" "For now." Noah stood, his legs unsteady. As he reached the door, Holloway called out, "Mr. Bennett?" Noah turned. "You did the right thing, coming in, telling the truth. That takes guts." Noah nodded, not trusting himself to speak. And then he left. Mbasmas. When Noah walked out of the police station, Lila was waiting in the parking lot. She was leaning against her car, arms crossed, her face pale. "What are you doing here?" Noah asked. "I couldn't let you do this alone." Noah's throat tightened. "I thought you were done." "I was angry, but I'm not done." She pushed off the car and walked toward him. "What happened?" "I told him everything. He's going to verify it. If it checks out, they'll close the case." "And if it doesn't?" "Then I'll deal with it." Lila looked at him for a long moment, and then she wrapped her arms around him. Noah held her tightly, his chest heaving with relief. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for walking out, for doubting you." "You had every right to." "No, I didn't, because you're trying to do the right thing, and that's more than most people would do." Noah pulled back, looking into her eyes. "I don't know what happens next, but whatever it is, I want you there." "I'm not going anywhere," Lila said softly, and for the first time in weeks, Noah believed her. 2 weeks later, Detective Holloway called. "Case closed," he said simply. "Your story checked out. Miss Hart confirmed everything. You're in the clear." Noah sank onto the couch, relief flooding through him. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just don't make me regret this." "I won't." When Noah hung up, he immediately called Lila. "It's over," he said. "Really?" "Yeah, we're free." Lila let out a shaky laugh. "I can't believe it." "Me neither." "So what now?" Noah smiled. "Now we move forward." And for the first time in 3 years, Noah Bennett felt like he finally could. Moving forward turned out to be harder than Noah expected. Not because of the police investigation. That was behind them. Not because of the past. They'd faced that head-on and survived. But because building a life together required something neither of them had practiced in a long time. Trust. Real trust. The kind that didn't come with conditions or escape routes. The kind that meant showing up even when it was uncomfortable. Even when old fears whispered that running was safer. For Noah, it meant letting Lila see the parts of himself he'd spent years hiding, the mornings when he woke up convinced he was failing Eli, the nights when the weight of being a single parent felt too heavy to carry, the moments when he wondered if he was capable of being the partner she deserved. For Lila, it meant accepting that the gaps in her memory didn't define her, that the woman she'd been 3 years ago, obsessive, unraveling, desperate, wasn't who she was now. That she could choose differently, be different. Without apologizing for the past she couldn't fully remember. It was messy. There were arguments, nights when one of them slept on the couch because words had been said that couldn't be taken back. Days when the silence between them felt louder than any fight. But they stayed, and slowly, the foundation they were building started to feel solid. 6 months after the investigation closed, Noah asked Lila to move in. They were sitting on his porch, watching Eli chase fireflies in the backyard, when Noah said it. "Move in with us." Lila turned to look at him, surprised. "What?" "Move in. You're here almost every night anyway. Eli asks where you are when you're not. And He paused, searching for the right words. "I want you here. Permanently." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm sure." "What about Eli? Have you talked to him about this?" Noah smiled. "He's the one who suggested it." "He did?" "Last week. He asked why you have to go home when we all want you to stay." Lila laughed, wiping her eyes. "He said that?" Word for word. She looked out at Eli, who was now trying to catch fireflies in his hands and failing spectacularly. "I don't want to mess this up, Noah. I don't want to come in and change everything he's used to." "You won't. You already fit here. You have for a while." Lila was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Okay." "Okay?" "Yeah, I'll move in." Noah pulled her into his arms, his chest tight with something that felt dangerously close to happiness. And 2 weeks later, Lila Hart officially became part of their lives, in a way that felt permanent. The transition wasn't seamless. Lila had her own habits, her own rhythms, and merging them with Noah's routine took adjustment. She liked the apartment warmer than Noah did. She reorganized the kitchen in a way that made sense to her, but left Noah searching for the coffee mugs every morning. She had a habit of leaving her shoes in places where Noah would trip over them. But she also made the house feel like a home. She cooked meals that weren't takeout or frozen. She helped Eli with his homework without being asked. She sat with Noah on the porch at night, her head on his shoulder, and they talked about nothing and everything until the stars came out. Eli loved having her there. He started calling her by her name instead of Dad's friend, which felt like a milestone neither Noah nor Lila had expected. He'd ask her to read him bedtime stories when Noah was working late. He'd show her his drawings and ask if she thought they were good. He'd curl up next to her on the couch during movie nights like it was the most natural thing in the world. And Lila, who'd never had a family of her own, soaked it all in like someone who'd been thirsty her whole life. But not everything was easy. One night, about 3 months after Lila moved in, Noah came home late from a job to find her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, dropping his toolbox. Lila looked up, her expression raw. "My mom called." Noah's stomach sank. Lila rarely talked about her family. He knew her parents lived on the East Coast. He knew they weren't close. But that was about it. "What did she say?" Noah asked carefully. "She's getting remarried to some guy I've never met, and she wants me to come to the wedding." "That's good, right?" Lila laughed bitterly. "Good? She didn't even know I had an accident. I lost 6 months of my life, spent weeks in the hospital, and she didn't know because we hadn't spoken in over a year." "Why not?" "Because she thinks I'm a disappointment." Lila wiped her eyes roughly. "I didn't go to medical school like she wanted. I didn't marry the guy she approved of. I moved across the country to get away from her expectations. And now she calls out of nowhere to invite me to her wedding like we're some happy family." Noah sat down beside her, reaching for her hand. "You don't have to go." "I know. But part of me wants to. Part of me wants to show up and prove that I'm fine, that I don't need her approval, that I built a life without her. And the other part? The other part is terrified that she'll look at me and see exactly what she always has. A screw-up who can't get her life together." Noah squeezed her hand. "You're not a screw-up, Lila. I stalked a stranger, crashed my car, lost my memory, and spent 3 years trying to piece myself back together. That's pretty much the definition of a screw-up." "No, it's the definition of surviving." Lila looked at him, her eyes wet. "You really believe that?" "Yeah, I do. You went through something most people wouldn't survive, and you came out the other side. You rebuilt your life from nothing. You let yourself fall in love even though you were terrified. You're one of the strongest people I know." "I don't feel strong." "You don't have to feel it for it to be true." Lila leaned into him, and Noah wrapped his arms around her, holding her while she cried. "I'm not going to the wedding," she said finally. "You sure?" "Yeah, I don't need to prove anything to her. I just need to keep building the life I actually want." Noah kissed the top of her head. "Then that's what we'll do." But the conversation with her mother stayed with Lila. Over the next few weeks, Noah noticed her pulling back, not from him or Eli, but from herself. She stopped volunteering at the school. She worked longer hours at her marketing job, coming home exhausted and distant. She smiled less, laughed less. One night, after Eli was asleep, Noah found her sitting on the porch, staring into the dark. "You've been quiet lately," he said, sitting down beside her. "I've just been thinking." "About what?" "About whether this is enough." Noah's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I left my old life behind. The high-pressure job, the penthouse, the version of myself that was always chasing something, and I built this instead. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just hiding." "Hiding from what?" "From the fact that I don't know who I am anymore. I lost 6 months, Noah. 6 months of memories, decisions, experiences, and I've spent the last 3 years pretending it doesn't matter, that I can just move forward and be fine. But what if I'm not fine? What if I'm just broken?" Noah turned to face her. "You're not broken." "How do you know?" "Because broken things don't love the way you do. Broken things don't show up every day and try. Broken things don't fight for the people they care about." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared, Noah. I'm scared that one day you're going to wake up and realize I'm not worth it, that I'm too damaged, too complicated, too much work." Noah took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. You are worth it. Every hard conversation, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, you are worth all of it, and I'm not going anywhere." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've already lost you once, and I'm not doing it again." Lila kissed him then, hard and desperate, like she was trying to believe him. And Noah kissed her back, hoping she could feel what he couldn't always say, that she was his second chance. And he wasn't letting go. Things shifted after that night. Lila started going back to therapy regularly, working through the parts of herself she'd been avoiding. She quit the marketing job that was draining her and took a part-time position teaching art classes at a community center. It paid less, but she came home lighter, happier. Noah started letting himself be vulnerable too. He told Lila about the nights he woke up in a panic, convinced he was failing Eli, about the guilt he carried from the accident, about the fear that he'd never be enough for anyone. And Lila listened. She didn't try to fix it, she just stayed. They learned how to fight better, how to say what they meant without tearing each other apart. They learned how to apologize without making excuses. They learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about choosing each other, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. 1 year after Lila moved in, Noah took Eli and Lila on a road trip. They drove to the coast, rented a small cabin, and spent a week doing nothing but being together. They built sandcastles, they flew kites, they stayed up late around a fire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. On the last night, after Eli had fallen asleep, Noah and Lila sat on the beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. "I've been thinking," Noah said. "About what?" "About how we got here. All the things that had to go wrong for us to end up together." Lila leaned her head on his shoulder. "You think it was worth it?" "Yeah, I do." "Even the hard parts?" "Especially the hard parts." Lila was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "I used to think I needed to remember everything, that if I could just fill in the gaps, I'd finally feel whole. But I don't think that anymore." "Why not?" "Because I am whole, right here, right now, with you and Eli. The past doesn't define me. This does." Noah kissed her temple. "I love you. I love you too." They sat there in the quiet, the ocean stretching out before them, and Noah realized something. This was it. This was the life he'd been fighting for. Not perfect, not easy, but real, and that was enough. 2 months later, Noah asked Lila to marry him. He didn't plan it, didn't buy a ring or make a grand gesture. They were in the kitchen making dinner together when Eli asked, "Are you guys going to get married?" Noah froze, a knife halfway through a tomato. Lila turned to look at Eli, surprised. "Why do you ask?" "Because my friend's parents are married, and you guys are like parents. So I thought maybe you'd get married too." Noah glanced at Lila, and she looked back at him, her eyes wide. "Do you want to?" Noah asked. "Do I want to what?" Lila said. "Get married." "Are you asking me?" "Yeah, I'm asking." Lila stared at him, her mouth open. "Right now? In the kitchen, while we're making spaghetti?" "Why not?" "Because—" She stopped, shaking her head. "This is insane." "Is that a no?" "It's not a no. It's just—" She laughed, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You're supposed to plan this, make it special." "It is special. We're here, together. That's all I need." Eli tugged on Lila's sleeve. "Is that a yes?" Lila looked down at him, then at Noah, and then she smiled, bright and unguarded and real. "Yeah," she said. "It's a yes." Eli cheered, jumping up and down, and Noah pulled Lila into his arms, kissing her while their son danced around them. And in that moment, Noah understood something he'd spent years trying to learn. Love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who made the imperfect parts bearable. Someone who stayed when it was easier to leave. Someone who chose you, even when the choice was hard. Lila was that person for him, and he was that person for her. They got married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony in Noah's backyard, just close friends and family. Lila wore a simple white dress. Noah wore a suit he'd bought the day before. Eli stood between them, holding the rings, grinning so wide his face hurt. There was no grand speech, no perfectly written vows, just two people promising to keep choosing each other. Every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Afterward, they had a barbecue. Eli ran around with the other kids, high on cake and excitement. Lila's therapist came, which made Lila cry. Noah's sister gave a toast that was equal parts sarcastic and heartfelt. And as the sun set and the fireflies came out, Noah stood on the porch, watching Lila laugh with Eli, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was theirs. A year after the wedding, Lila found out she was pregnant. It was unexpected, terrifying, and the best thing that had ever happened to them. Eli was over the moon. He spent months planning what kind of big brother he'd be, making lists of things he'd teach the baby, drawing pictures of what he thought they'd look like. Noah was quietly thrilled and completely panicked. He'd done this once before, but that felt like a lifetime ago. And this time, he wasn't doing it alone. This time, he had Lila. And that made all the difference. Lila was scared too. She worried about whether she'd be a good mom, whether the gaps in her memory would affect how she parented, whether she was ready for this. But as her belly grew and the baby kicked and the reality of it all settled in, she realized something. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be present. And that she could do. Their daughter was born on a rainy Tuesday in April. They named her Grace, not because of any religious meaning, but because that's what she felt like. Grace. A second chance they didn't deserve but got anyway. Eli held her for the first time with tears in his eyes, whispering, "Hi, Grace. I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you everything." Lila cried. Noah cried. And in that small hospital room, surrounded by the people they loved, they realized something. This was what happiness looked like. Not a destination, but a series of moments strung together. Imperfect, messy, real, and worth every single struggle it took to get there. Years passed. Eli grew into a kind, thoughtful teenager who looked out for his little sister with a fierceness that made Noah proud. Grace became a whirlwind of energy and laughter, asking a million questions and never accepting simple answers. Lila built a career she loved, teaching art and helping people express what words couldn't. And Noah kept fixing things, not just breakers and water heaters, but the small cracks in the foundation of their life together. The arguments that needed resolving, the fears that needed facing, the moments when one of them wanted to run and the other reminded them why they stayed. They weren't perfect. They still fought, still doubted, still had days when everything felt too hard. But they kept showing up. And that, Noah learned, was the real secret. Love wasn't about finding someone who completed you. It was about finding someone who made you want to be better, who saw your worst parts and stayed anyway, who chose you over and over, even when the choice wasn't easy. Lila was that person for him, and he was that person for her. One evening, when Eli was 16 and Grace was 8, Noah found Lila sitting on the porch watching the sunset. He sat down beside her, taking her hand. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Us. How we got here." "Regret anything?" Lila smiled. "Not a single thing." "Even the hard parts?" "Especially the hard parts. They made us who we are." Noah kissed her hand. "I love you." "I love you too." They sat there in the quiet, the sounds of their children playing inside filling the air, and Noah realized something. He'd spent so many years afraid of losing what mattered, afraid of not being enough, afraid of failing, afraid of the past catching up. But somewhere along the way, he'd stopped being afraid. Not because the fears went away, but because he'd learned something more important. That life wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about finding people who made the pain worth facing. People who reminded you that even when things fell apart, you could rebuild. Stronger, better, together. Lila had taught him that, and every day he tried to teach her the same thing. That she was enough. That the gaps in her memory didn't define her. That she'd built a life worth living, not in spite of her past, but because of it. Because survival wasn't just about making it through. It was about choosing to keep going, keep loving, keep building, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And that choice, that daily, deliberate choice to stay, was what made life worth living. Not the perfect moments, but the messy, complicated, beautiful ones in between. The ones where you looked at the person beside you and thought, "Yeah, this is worth it," and meant it every single time. If there's anything Noah and Lila's story teaches us, it's this. We don't get to choose what happens to us. We don't get to control the past or predict the future. We don't get to avoid pain or skip the hard parts. But we do get to choose how we respond. We get to choose whether we run or stay, whether we hide or face the truth, whether we let our mistakes define us or use them as stepping stones to something better. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is choose love. Not the easy kind, not the kind that comes without cost, but the kind that requires showing up, being honest, forgiving what feels unforgivable, trusting when trust feels impossible. That kind of love doesn't fix everything, but it makes everything worth fighting for. And in the end, that's all any of us can hope for. Not a perfect life, but a life worth living, with people worth fighting for. Noah found that with Lila, and Lila found that with Noah. Not because fate brought them together, but because they chose each other every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And that choice, that simple, powerful, daily choice, made all the difference.